Hey gang, it's Will from Tested.
And it's Norm from Tested.
Norm and Chan, we both have laptops on our desk.
I have multiple laptops.
You have so many laptops.
Only one of us has a laptop of the future.
You have a gray MacBook, Norm.
Space gray.
It doesn't look like space gray.
I wish I could spin this like a basketball on my fingertip, but I can't.
Like sands through the hourglass.
I can do this finally.
It just disappears. It looks like the monolith.
This is a new MacBook.
Yeah. The Apple logo is upside down. There you go.
There goes the new MacBook, which is quite controversial.
This is a laptop we had a ton of questions about. It was rumored earlier this year, or earlier last year even.
Earlier this year, right at CES, remember?
Oh, that's right. There's one port and a headphone jack. Mm-hmm. No power plug that I can see. It's 12 inches. It has a Retina screen. It's not quite a MacBook Air. It's not quite a MacBook Pro with Retina.
Do you remember how when Steve Jobs announced the iPad, or any Apple product, there's always a tagline. Like for iPad, it was the most powerful technology, magical device at revolutionary price, or some bullshit like that.
For the iPhone, it was 3 devices in one, right?
2015 MacBook.
Yes.
Apple's least powerful laptop at its most expensive price.
I think that's a fair assessment. It uses a different processor than the normal MacBook Airs and the MacBook Retinas, right? Mm-hmm. So we're looking at a Haswell, but it's the low power Broadwell.
So let's talk about the landscape of MacBooks. And obviously, if you're a Windows laptop user or PC user, we have something for you at the end as well. So if there's a reason to watch. There's also information here that's going to be relevant to when you're shopping for laptops across the board, but whether it's going to be Apple or PC, even though there's not exactly the same performance parity on the same hardware.
But kind of our assumption is that if you're in the market for a Mac laptop, you're in the market for a Mac laptop and aren't necessarily interested in a Windows laptop, and vice versa.
Right, and even though you could always change your opinion. So right now, in terms of the Mac landscape, there are 3 tiers of laptops. There were 3 tiers. But 4 years ago.
I think I'd say 4 even.
4 tiers.
Yeah.
You had the MacBook, the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro.
So entry level, thin and light, and high end.
That's how things were just back then. Now things are a little different. The MacBook Air, for example, this is the 11-inch version, is the entry level.
Yeah.
Now, and you were using a 13-inch MacBook Air for a while. I've been using the 11-inch MacBook Air for 4 years now. I really, really love this laptop.
The 13-inch MacBook Air is probably my all-time favorite laptop right now because it's a perfect mix of weight and performance. Had a real CPU, kind of crappy integrated graphics, kind of a crappy screen by today's standards. It was okay at the time that I bought it. And I was able to do both, I was able to use that as my primary work computer. So I could do some light video editing even, do all the photo editing and stuff I needed, and write on it for, at the beginning 8 hours a day, and by the end 4 or 5 hours a day.
Right, and as the Intel dual-core U processors got faster, with Haswell, with Broadwell, you got longer battery life, better performance. These are all computers, and most laptops, in terms of the Ultrabook class, they run at a reasonable frequency, around the 1 gigahertz, 1.3 gigahertz, and then can turbo boost at load when you're running a Photoshop, when you're running Premiere. And then, based on what their thermal envelope is, that max TDP, how much wattage it wants to consume, it will throttle on that. So the Air, which
the 11-inch Air,
11-inch Air, you could have put an i7 in this. This model is the i5, had plenty of ports, DisplayPort. You could plug this in Thunderbolt, USB 3. The MagSafe adapter. Now all of that is gone for the Advantage. The big revolutionary thing that Apple wants to sell you on is this size, this form factor.
So the thing that you didn't touch on the 11-inch Air, and my complaint about the 11-inch Air, the reason I went with the 13 instead of the 11 is the screen.
Yeah,
it has a low resolution, kind of small screen that I didn't think was big enough for me to use as my main computer. Like I would want to hook up an external monitor, which is what you do most of the time when you're sitting in the office here.
Yeah. So if we look at the form factors between these two laptops, yes, the new MacBook, the 2015 12-inch MacBook, is physically in all but one dimension smaller than the 11-inch Air.
How is that possible? 11 is smaller than 12.
It's at its thickest point. It's thinner.
Is it a different aspect ratio on the screen?
It is a different aspect ratio on the screen. It's shorter here. The only dimension where it's actually bigger is that it's actually a little taller over here. And if you look at the photos, I know a lot of people who first got their impressions on this Air or on this MacBook said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe how thin it is," and especially when the screen is open, how crazy thin it is. Apple did a lot of the same tricks it has done with all of their
beveled edges
products.
to hide
Exactly.
the thickness.
If you look at this image right here, sure, it looks really thin. It looks like that's the thickness of this laptop. But when you realize it actually, that is actual thickness.
There's another couple of millimeters there.
And also the padding with there. So that's the case. That was the case with the Air, where it looks like it's that thin.
They even do this on the full size Retina laptop if you want to see. Look, it looks thin.
Looks thin.
And then boom, there's a big fat battery pouch on the bottom.
Same thing with their iMac.
Well, this doesn't feel wobbly at all. Like, I look at how thin that is, and I expect it to feel a little bit flexy, and it doesn't at all.
Construction is really good. I think what the real marvelous thing about the size of this, and we go back to that screen you talked about on the Air, is that even though in every dimension but one, it's smaller than the MacBook Air, and it's lighter, it's actually a bigger screen. We're not even talking about resolution, just the sheer size of the screen.
Well, and it's a 4:3 screen instead of a 16:9 as well,
look
right?
How dirty
or 16:10.
The old ass Air is. This bevel all the way around, and then a very thin black bevel around this 12-inch, the new MacBook. Now, I don't think, and we'll get this to the very end, I don't think there's any reason Apple couldn't have put this screen in this form factor.
Right.
And that's something that I think will eventually come. But for now, they're launching that with this MacBook. So in terms of weight, we're talking about...
the other question is, can they make this even smaller? And that's going to be the new Air, right? If this is the new normal, what's smaller than this? I don't know.
I don't know if they can make this much smaller.
It's just a sheet of paper that you stick to the wall, and then another one you lay out, and just...
They sell something called the iPad as well.
Oh, right.
That could also be it. So it is lighter as well, 2 pounds as opposed to 2.38 on the 11-inch Air, 3.5 on your Pro.
3 inches on the 13-inch.
3 pounds on the 13-inch. I'll tell you that carrying the 11-inch Air, which previously I loved for being how portable this was, and this fit in my camera bag, and I use it in hotel rooms and airplanes, and then using this, it really has not changed my life at all. Its weight and its size.
I mean, that's the thing I noticed. So I've gone both directions. I originally started with a 13-inch MacBook Pro, went down to the 13-inch Air, went back up to the 13-inch Retina. A half-pound difference you don't notice.
Right. If you're jumping from the 11-inch Air to a full-size MacBook Pro, you're going to notice a pound and a half difference, or pound difference. You're not going to notice the less than half a pound difference, 0.35 pounds difference between this and 11-inch Air if it's in your backpack.
Well, and if you're replacing a 3 or 4 year old laptop that you had to carry your power brick around with you everywhere, that difference is going to get lost in the power brick as well. So,
right. But the screen. The reason to get this really is for the screen.
That's a pretty screen.
Let's take a look at the screen right now, which has its own quirks. This is a 12-inch screen, as I mentioned earlier, and I will actually decrease the brightness so you can actually...
I like that the bezel. I like how thin the bezel is compared to, say, the MacBook Pro. Like, if you look at this, there's a lot more bezel on this one than there is on the 12-inch Retina.
It's a little bit. It's close. These are a really good comparison because I believe they are almost exactly the same panel. This is a 226 PPI.
Yeah, and it's 1280 by 800 doubled, so it's 2560 by 1600.
This is an awkward 2,304 pixels by 1440 pixels, also at 226 PPI. Now, if you look at the way Apple has done traditionally the pixel doubling for the quote-unquote, there go my quotes, air quotes, Retina screens, you would think that a 2304 by 1440 pixel resolution screen would simulate the effect of 1152 by 720.
Oh, right. Yeah, my favorite resolution. Almost 720p.
Almost, it is, I guess, almost 720p. 1152 by 720.
1280 by 720 would be 720p.
Yeah, so not even 720, but that's not a lot of screen real estate. We're talking about the desktop space.
I mean, and just to be clear, this is the reason I was, when the new 13-inch Retina came out, I immediately ditched the 13-inch Air because the 1280 by 800 screen, or 1440 by 900 screen on that didn't give me enough resolution to work.
Right.
Especially in things like Premiere and Lightroom and stuff like that.
So I'm going to show you, and here's the real world example. In the settings, you can actually, there are 4 scaled settings.
Are you at the default now, or are you one size up
I'm
now?
one size up.
Okay.
So if you go for larger text, they'll actually give you a warning because
This is-
some applications will not actually fit. The larger text setting,
Whoa! Nobody should use this.
no one should
Old
use
people
this.
who don't want to wear their glasses.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible.
That's rough.
One step up, this is actually the true pixel doubling.
And what resolution is this? Is this mimicking?
This is 1152 by 720.
Yeah,
the true
that's-
pixel doubling. But that's not enough, as you can see on a Safari page, to really have. I mean, it's still scaling.
The thing I found at this resolution on other laptops is that you end up using a lot of full screen apps.
Yeah.
So, and if you use stuff like Premiere, Photoshop that need a lot of vertical, Photoshop less so, but definitely Premiere, a lot of vertical space, it's really hard to use. And you have to move the dock out to the side, and that menu bar at the top, suddenly you're talking about a real amount of pixels that you want to have back.
Now notice performance is great here. Like performance, the bounce, real time, no problem here, especially if you're switching. I use multiple desktops.
Wow, that's a lot of spaces, Norm.
Notice the animation here. This is what I notice. Am I losing frames? Nah, no drop frames. That's fine. Now, the default actually is not at that 1152 by 720. If I click default, and I really want to touch the screen because I'm so used to Windows laptops with touchscreens, the default simulates your 1280 by 800.
Which is, I think, the minimum vertical resolution you can have on a laptop that's usable today.
Yeah, and I even put the bar on the side.
Yeah.
1280 by 800. Now, that is not a pixel or an integer multiplier of the screen.
It's like the iPhone 6. Same thing as the iPhone 6.
What's
right?
happening right now is the graphics card is actually rendering at 2560 by 1600, what the resolution of this, and then scaling down to
whatever the size it needs.
to
Yeah,
1280 by 800.
resolution. Yeah.
Exactly. To 2304 by 1440. Now, I actually think this is not enough screen real estate either.
And this is the highest you can go, right?
No, this is the default.
Oh, this is the default.
So I actually go one step further and click the more space.
Oh, that's interesting, because on the 13-inch Retina, the default is the second option, and you have two more options. You can go to 1440 by 900 or all the way up to 1680 by 1050. I find myself working at the 1680 by 1050, which gives me a pretty good amount of space, almost 1080p.
Now, this is the quote-unquote the more space, which is simulating now a 1440 by 900. Basically, this is what your MacBook Air 13-inch would look like in Retina.
And 1440 by 900 is 16 by 10-ish?
It's 16 by 10.
Okay.
It's exactly 16 by 10. So the MacBook Air 11, 16 by 9, this MacBook, and also the 13-inch MacBook Air, 16 by 10. I find that this is enough screen real estate for web browsing. I'm going to get out of full screen mode here. I love running things in Windows and in Spaces. What I'm going to do is actually pop up all my Google Chrome windows. Oh, is it actually?
There's a good way to destroy your battery life.
Yeah. I don't think it's actually opening all of them at once. Recent tabs. 9 tabs. There it goes.
Norm, you have a tab problem.
And this is just one of my windows. I run lots of Chrome browsers and Chrome windows with multiple tabs in my Spaces.
It's a good thing this thing has 8 gigs of memory.
Yeah. And you can see that performance here now is starting to hitch. When I have stuff like Lightroom popped up.
So this is what's the processor in this is a Broadwell U?
No, it's a Core M.
Core M.
Broadwell U is what you have on
Right.
on your your MacBook Pro.
What's the fundamental difference is that one is the lower power, very low power, designed to work with no fan. The other is kind of a desktop replacement mobile processor.
So there are two things. When we're talking about screen, the thing that really drives performance screen is the GPU. This is Intel integrated, HD 5300. But you're asking this integrated graphics card to render multiple desktop spaces at 2880 by
So presumably
1800.
you're using a ton of your system memory just to render the desktops.
We're using all of the graphics memory, and that's why you have hitching when you're running at this more text
Do
resolution.
you think it's reasonable on a thin and light machine like this to run how many spaces do you have? 5 or 6 there?
I have 5 spaces, and sometimes I run Windows in full screen, which
As in more
turns
spaces.
into one more space.
That seems like it seems a bit excessive.
I don't think so.
Like
at all.
I run 3 or 4 spaces at most on a laptop.
To each their own.
Yeah, no,
I
I
think the person who's going to early adopt and the executive who's going to
Well, I
want
think
the
those are
latest
2
and
different
greatest.
people.
Sure, the executive always wants new stuff,
Right.
and is willing to pay for it.
But the power user and the executive are usually not the same person.
The executive's only going to run one space, full screen, Safari. I'm running 6 spaces.
You're the worst
20
case
different
scenario.
Chrome tabs, Photoshop, Lightroom at the same time. And at that load capacity, I see performance hitching, drop frames in the UI in terms of switching between the spaces, and also Chrome scrolling.
Are you
gets a little hitchy.
seeing memory running out of memory, or are you just running at a significant percentage of CPU utilization?
Not a lot of memory problems. Apple, I think OS X has done a really good job of memory management. They dig into your disk space, so it takes your SSD storage, but it's like just like on iOS, it kind of like stores that in previous other states.
So the thing that everybody's going to say right now is, but wait, Norm, you're running Chrome. Everybody knows that Chrome on OS X is kind of a performance hog. So if you were running Safari instead of Chrome, you wouldn't be having these issues.
It's true.
Maybe.
No, it's absolutely true. But I mean,
I use Chrome.
I use
You
Chrome. Yep. Yeah. And I know that part of this is Google's problem not optimizing because they're building Chrome for multiple platforms, and part of it is Apple's problem. For yes, Apple has an advantage because they built Safari. They're only making it for Mac OS X and iOS, and they built OS X. So yes, those things are going to work perfectly.
They're building APIs in OS X specifically so they can make Safari run better, and then typically Google lags 3-4 generations, which means 6 months sometimes behind them in implementing the new features.
The way Google has designed Chrome, it's resource intensive.
Right.
But I mean, it's what I like, and I want the option to use it.
Right.
So I'm not going to buy hardware and choose not to use some software.
Of course.
Or be forced to use another company's software.
The one thing I do is when I'm on an airplane or something like that, when I'm in a situation where I want to make that battery last the longest possible, I do usually switch to Safari.
So in terms of compute performance, though, we're talking about a Core M CPU. Now, this is the upgraded version of the MacBook. They sell it in basically you can get 3 different versions. The base model is 1.1 gigahertz. This is the 1.2 gigahertz. It turbos to 2.6 gigahertz. I ran Photoshop and Lightroom exports, compared it to the MacBook Air. This is a 2-year-old MacBook Air, and it wasn't all that much slower than the MacBook Air. Now, it's not as fast as the MacBook Pro.
Right. So the benchmarks that I have seen and the benchmarks that I ran between the MacBook and the MacBook Pro here, the new this is the 2015 Broadwell MacBook Pro. And it's the one notch up to. It's the cheapest one you could get that has 512 gigs of storage. Basically was like 3 minutes and 22 seconds to run our Photoshop script on this MacBook, and about 4 minutes and 15 seconds on the MacBook. Yep. So you're 30% slower basically, which isn't too bad.
That's not bad at all.
Given the fact that this is a 2.9 gigahertz processor and that's a 1.2 gigahertz processor. Now they're very different CPUs just because of the way pipelining and all that stuff works on the lower power CPUs, but I thought I was very surprised with that. The question I had is, does that performance ramp down as the load goes up and the heat that the processor generates goes up? So
yeah, 2 questions. One, we're talking about throttling, and throttling can come with in 2 places. One, if it's plugged in versus not plugged in. In my tests, leaving this unplugged didn't throttle that much. So I think that's an OS X thing, because I didn't see any performance difference. In gaming, sometimes things slow down after a little while, but and I think that's probably thermal as much as anything on the Retina. With this, it was same benchmark scores, plugged in or not plugged in. Yeah, I'm running actually showing you our Photoshop script right now. We have a raw image, and it goes through a ton of different things. And you can, I mean, it's showing you if you're doing complicated things, blurs, even Photoshop, like image rotates and auto levels and stuff like that. Both, I mean, Photoshop has gotten better, and Intel's chips have gotten better to a point where this is still outperforming computers from 3 years ago. Well, and the thing so the benchmarks that I've seen and your results tell me that is probably the closest comparison is actually my 2.5-year-old MacBook Air. About a 2-year-old computer. Air. Yeah. Now, in terms of the other the throttling is the question. Yeah. At load, I actually didn't see much long. It is heat dependent, and with heat test, this runs at about high 30 degrees.
Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius. And it gets hot right here. Now, this is a fanless design, so one of the advantages of using this Core M, and PCs have had this for a while too. You know, the Asus laptop, Lenovo's laptop using Core M. No fans. It gets warm right there.
Well, that's where the motherboard on this thing is basically a strip. It looks like an iPad motherboard almost. It's so small.
So it's getting warm not where the battery is, but basically right here, because that's where the chipset is.
Yeah, it's basically
right
it's aligned with the black thing.
And then this is all battery. Yeah. So I'm feeling getting warm when running the Photoshop script right here. So we're gonna get throttling when it gets hits about 42, 43, 45 degrees.
And what kind of work have you done that made it hit 40? Like, if you do a big raw export, will that do it?
If I'm exporting, for example, I'm going to stop this. If I'm exporting 100 images in Lightroom, almost no throttling. Exporting 600 images in Lightroom, you get throttling above that, about the 300 mark.
I mean, it seems like if you're doing kind of normal, exporting 600 images in Lightroom is something I would want to do on a desktop or like a big desktop replacement laptop. I don't think I'd want to do that I wouldn't expect to do that on.
You're not doing that once a week.
Yeah.
You're not even doing it maybe once a month. It depends on what type of photographer you are. For me, I did that kind of stuff on this, Comic-Con, for example, and it's nice that I can do that here, but it will just take me that extra
how much
or so.
Does it? Okay, so it throttles enough that it just slows down.
It just slows down
half speed, basically.
Yeah. So you're better off, segmenting your workload, exporting 50 at a time, 100 at a time, waiting a little bit, and then doing it, as opposed to trying to do it all at once.
Okay.
Because then it just gets confused.
Interesting. And I assume while you're doing something like that, you're probably not going to try to do anything else in the background.
No, you're not doing anything else in the background.
Plug it in, walk away, come back in 20 minutes.
Yep. So I thought performance, it was as expected, which is to say that it's not impressive, but it wasn't it's not a computer that I felt like a netbook era. I can't use this for my real tasks.
Well, I mean, for the price that you paid for this, I would hope that it did not feel like a netbook.
Wow. The price you're paying for, you're still paying way more than I think you should pay
for.
It can run some games. Now, because of the high resolution, I think that the GPU is already taxed.
Okay.
Games are not going to scale particularly well. For example, on the 11-inch Air, StarCraft at low settings, Dota runs no problem. Here, while you can still do that, you have to make sure the desktop resolution, the game resolution are paired right, so it's not going to be off axis. It's not going to think like it's running at 2880 by 1400 by 1440, 1800. So don't play games on this. You can, if you really want, like a Minecraft will run just fine. It does have the CPU to do photo work and image editing work. So I wouldn't do video editing work on this.
I've been able to give a point of comparison, because the Retina MacBook that I'm using here was configured at about $100 more expensive than the MacBook that you're using there. I'm doing video editing on this. I'm not doing long projects, but a 10-minute project is no problem. It exports in about 45 minutes at H.264.
This is what this computer is made for.
Kind of. This is kind of an in-betweener, though, because if you look at it, it's only a dual core compared to the 15-inch Retina, which is a quad core. It's not, it's a more capable Air for a half pound. I just fired up Cities Skylines. You can see it runs. You can play it. The fan immediately turns on.
Yeah, you can hear it.
You can hear the fan spinning.
I think the people who are going to spend $1,700 or $1,800 on a laptop want to be able to do video editing.
I think for $1,700, that's what I want. For $1,600, that's what I want. Not
if you're spending $1,000 on a laptop, being able to if you have the time, being able to do H.264 compression and some light editing in iMovie is great. But that's a reasonable for a Mac. You're better off using the iMovie stuff than Premiere.
Did you even try
at the $1,000 level?
Did you even try video editing with that?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, iMovie's here, but Premiere, it's the resolution with the graphics stuttering. It's not going to be good.
Does the Broadwell in that have the H.264 encode acceleration?
I do not know. I don't think so.
It has integrated graphics. It's probably built in, actually. Yeah.
So. Performance, you're going to get more than just browsing the web with this. I hope people aren't buying this just for browsing the web, but you can browse for a long time.
Okay.
So the battery, which we talked about being basically everywhere here.
Yeah, it's the whole thing except for a little tiny square.
9.5 hours on Wi-Fi in Safari, one space. When using it the way I want to use it, it's a little under 6 hours.
So that lines with what I saw. I saw a full day, 7.5 hours when using Chrome. When I was using it with Safari, I had 30% battery at the end of the day when I went home.
So it's good battery life. It's not mind-blowing.
I think, coming from a 3-year-old laptop for me, 10 hours of battery life is amazing.
Yeah, but Apple could be doing more. If they put Core M in a different form factor,
no doubt.
they could put a 2-day battery life on a laptop. They chose not to do that.
Yeah.
They're maintaining, just like their phones, maintaining the standard, incrementally improving over time.
Realistically, I think a full day's battery life is a good, that's a good, hey, we can stop here, right? Until we get to a week, then I'm fine plugging my laptop in at night. That seems okay to me.
I would hope for more than 1 day, especially if you're talking about at load. If I'm talking about I can use only half a day the way I really want to use it,
fair enough.
Then I would rather have 2 days of simple Safari use and 1 full day at load.
The difference for me is that when I sit down now, the first thing I do isn't plug in my laptop, which is what it always used to be. Now, speaking of plugging in your laptop.
Yep, there's only one place to plug in stuff.
Yeah, how do you plug a USB thumb drive and power into that thing at the same time?
You need the accessory, which Apple hasn't even shipped yet as of today.
Great.
So this is the power adapter that comes with it. And you can see right here, that's USB Type-C. It is USB 3.1, but USB 3.1 isn't the 10 gigabits per second that has been advertised. It's USB 3.1 Gen 1, which is essentially the same as USB 3. So it's USB super speed. You can get 5 gigabits per second, theoretical maximum.
Okay.
1 cable. It's actually a pretty long power
cable. Do you
get
a USB-C to USB-C cable?
Nope. This is the only cable you get.
But
it is C. You're right.
Yeah, okay. So it comes with that. That's nice.
I don't know what that's.
You can't plug it into anything, I guess. Yeah.
So it's a power brick, which looks a lot like an iPad power brick.
It's like a big iPad power brick, a small 11-inch Air power brick.
And then.
How many watts is that power brick? Can you look at the label on the bottom and see?
This
is it 25 or something?
29 watts.
Okay. How long does it take to charge?
Not fast, not bad at all. It's like an hour for most of it.
To get to 80%-ish?
Yeah.
That's good.
So I keep that at the office now because I don't even charge this.
This is where you plug in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're accessories. So like I said, Apple has an $80 USB Type-C accessory that gives you power, a USB 3.0 Type A connection, and also HDMI. That's $80. It hasn't shipped yet. We're gonna get that in.
So as we record this, it's 2 weeks after this came out?
Yeah, 2 weeks after this came out.
Yeah, that's goofy.
I know. I don't know why it's.
If you're going to ship a laptop with 1 port, the adapter that gives you 3 ports seems like a good thing to have on the shelves when you sell it.
Include it.
Yeah.
Right. I wish they included it or even had it available for shipping. They don't. What I've bought though are several accessories that aren't not even Apple's accessories.
Okay. What do you got
from Model
here?
Price. So I'll tell you the essential one, and this is kind of looking forward toward the future. We're going to see USB Type-C in more laptops, not just MacBooks. And here's what you can do with it.
Just to be clear, the USB Type-C, one of the things that's exciting about it, it's very, very fast, but it's also it solves the USB superposition. We've talked about this before.
Yep.
It goes in both ways.
Yep, I can show you. Goes in this way.
Yep, and if you flip it over, it goes right back in again.
Goes back in.
He's really doing it, I assure you.
Right there.
Okay, so what do you got?
The essential accessory is this one right here. It's USB Type-C, male to Type A female. It's blue, so you know it's USB 3.
And is that just a cable? Is there logic in there, or do you know?
I don't know if there's logic in here, but in terms of speeds, there is no bottleneck. There's no overhead room.
So that's a fast USB 3 thumb drive?
This is one of the fastest USB thumb drives.
Which one is it?
I've used LaCie.
Okay.
That's, I believe, a 32
gigger.
It has
a screw lid?
It does have a screw lid. I was able to move a 7 gigabyte file on here in under a minute.
That's really fast.
7 gigabytes with this adapter. Aside from this adapter, if you want storage, here's another option. SanDisk has a USB Type-C flash drive. This is 32 gigs. Now this one's interesting because it has USB Type-C on one side, and then it has USB Type-A on the other side.
Oh, wow.
USB 3. So you can plug this in here.
New shimmers of floor wax. New shimmer's a dessert topping. Now, I noticed
Get data on here.
that's not going to go in flush, so it's going to push up on the bottom on the ground. How delicate is this Type-C connector?
Not delicate at all.
It's pretty sturdy. Okay.
No problem.
Cool.
I'm not going to snap it off.
No, don't break it
I bet
off.
if I put force on this, I could snap it off.
You don't break it off.
I'm not going to.
That seems like a mistake. Where would you plug your power in?
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Only problem with this one is that it was a little slower. Almost half as slow, actually. That same 7 gigabyte folder took 2 minutes with this.
That's still really fast.
It's still fast.
Is your 7 gigabyte folder a bunch of little files, or is it one big file?
It's a bunch of big files and a bunch of little files.
Okay.
And then there's also this right here.
Yep.
This one. I'll talk about this one next. DisplayPort. There's actually a Google cable.
Okay.
Because the new Chromebook Pixel,
the high-end.
the high-end one has a USB Type-C as well.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is that with DisplayPort, you can actually drive 4K displays with this laptop.
Really?
You need the newest version of Yosemite.
Right.
And
10.3?
10.10.3. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
03 one. And you can actually drive 4K 60
Wow.
with both single stream transport and multi-stream transport.
Oh, that's nice.
Of course, performance is not going to be fantastic, but for workstations, what's weird is that if you plug this in, you don't get power.
Yeah.
If you want power and a display, you have to use the Apple one, and that's HDMI.
And they don't have.
And HDMI won't let you get 60 FPS on 60 hertz on.
And it's only HDMI 1.4 or whatever?
Yep. That's
okay.
right. Yep. So the last cable is maybe perhaps the most interesting one, and that's because it allows me to do power. USB-C male to male.
Okay.
Type-C to
Why would you
Type-A.
need that ever?
Because I can plug this one in here, and on this one I have a USB power brick. I can plug that in there.
So you can charge from your phone charger?
I'm charging the MacBook from the phone charger.
How long does that take?
So again, it's a logarithmic curve for charging. At 50% here, it took half an hour to get from 50 to 60.
Okay, so this is a keep you running, not fill you up,
Yeah,
probably.
right. And this is a keep you running in your bag. So for example, if you're at a convention, you've already done a bunch of presentations and you've drained down to 30%, but you're going to take a taxi ride, this is throw in your car.
This to me seems more like I'm on an intercontinental flight and I don't have power at the seats, so here's a way for me to keep watching movies on my laptop for 10 hours instead of just 8.
You can do it.
12.
It's one of the exciting things about Type-C. I really wish there was more than one cable or one port.
It seems like there's no fundamental reason there couldn't have been a USB Type-C port on the other side as well. Sometimes I think Apple makes decisions like this just to make a statement about, hey, we can make a laptop with only one port. This seems very reminiscent of that original, the bulbous Air that he pulled out of the manila envelope on the stage 10 years ago.
My feeling is that it's probably partly that, probably also because of the Intel, the chips that they're using, the motherboard design. It's just like when the Surface was announced, the Surface Pro only had one USB 3 port. It's because the chipset design. If you want to get more, you have to use third-party controllers, and for space reasons, they only put the one.
And if you use a third-party controller, then you're going to have one good USB 3 port and one shitty USB 3 port, which nobody wants.
But in terms of trade-offs, I would have taken another USB 3 Type-C as opposed to this headphone jack, which I don't really use.
How much are these Type-C cables? Are they really expensive?
$10.
All those adapters from Monoprice?
Every one here is between $10 and $12. The most expensive one was the DisplayPort one.
Okay, and that one looks like it probably has logic happening inside it. The other ones look like they're just cables.
Dumb cables. So I think that's basically it. In terms of SKUs.
Yeah, so if you're buying a MacBook this year and you want to buy, it seems like the entry level is the 11-inch Air. If you want to just get a MacBook and you don't care about resolution, you need something you can use to take notes in school, stuff like that.
Don't buy a MacBook this year. This seems like a really bad year to buy a MacBook.
An Air.
Any MacBook.
Oh, you think?
Here are your options.
Yeah.
If you can wait, and I know a lot of people can't wait.
Yeah.
If you can wait, buying the Air now I think is a bad idea. Yes, there's Broadwell U on it, on both 11 and 13-inch. It has the crappy screen.
Yeah, if you look at comparable laptops on the Windows side, at that price range, you should have a much better screen.
Much better screen, even at $1,000. I think next year, and even if you're committed to the Mac ecosystem, next year I guarantee, or a year and a half from now, eventually the Air will get this high quality screen.
They also haven't updated the 15-inch Retina yet. That's still running Haswell.
So
don't buy 15-inch, don't buy 11-inch.
Don't buy 13 or 11 Air.
No one should buy the 13-inch Air ever at this point.
Yep. This one, if you're a student, it's completely unreasonable. I'm not exactly sure who this is for, except for the executive who wants everything.
Gary seems like the perfect market for this laptop.
Yep. Screenwriters.
Yeah.
For photo editors, yes, you can do that, but you should also look into a 13-inch Pro.
I think the 13-inch Pro for the money is a much better value.
But we're also still talking about a $1,700, potentially $1,600 to $1,700.
It's a really expensive laptop
for a dual-core computer. Yeah. That's really expensive. The screen is great. The screen is great on both these things.
We didn't talk about the keyboard at all.
Oh yes. So one of the ways to get down to this size is the keyboard. I really don't like this keyboard. The throw is almost non-existent.
When you say the throw, you mean the distance that the keys travel when you press them, and like that. Yeah, it's like nothing happens. I can't tell when I press the keys on it.
I mean, it's quiet, which is good.
Basically, we're hearing your fingers tapping on the keys. What was amazing to me is that the Force Touch trackpad is amazing.
The Force Touch trackpad, which is going to replace the way they do trackpads. Now, I haven't been able to find a great use for the Force Touch, the double press.
After using the Apple Watch for a weekend, I think Force Touch is a dud. I think the fact that this keyboard gives you the haptic response of a moving, this trackpad gives you the haptic response of a moving trackpad is the thing that's amazing. Yes. I think the Force Touch, eventually people will figure out something for it, but that's right now, 2 or 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
Right now, it's that it feels like the good trackpad.
The smart engineering was the good haptics on this. The response, when you press down, it presses back up to make it feel like you're depressing the button. But the ability to double press, and then press again.
Press hard.
That's not something that we've seen utilized well.
It's not being utilized well on the Apple Watch. It's not being utilized well on the trackpad.
This keyboard, very typable, but if you're coming from a mechanical keyboard, you're not going to like it at all.
Even if you're coming from a regular MacBook keyboard, I find it difficult. Yeah. I haven't used it as much as you have.
So MacBook here with the 512 gig storage and the 1.2 gigahertz, it's $1,700. I believe it's $150 cheaper, or
it's $1,500. $1,599 maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
For the entry level, your options in Core M. There's also the ASUS new ZenBook.
How's the trackpad on that thing?
Now, this one is, I think, the best use for Core M. It's actually the entry-level Core M. There it goes.
So you like this better than the Lenovo Yoga?
I think it doesn't try to sell itself as a pro laptop, and it did a really good job.
This is a big laptop.
It is. I mean, it doesn't need to be the smallest laptop. It's $700.
Okay.
It runs the entry-level Core M, which is admittedly only 8 gigahertz, or 8.8 gigahertz, less than a full gigahertz.
Okay.
It has 8 gigs of RAM.
Okay.
Has solid state, 256. No touchscreen.
PCIe solid state?
I don't believe so. I think it's SSD.
You think it's SATA? So that's the one thing that the MacBook has is it's an NVMe SSD that's connected directly to PCI Express. So it should be crazy fast storage, which is probably why the Photoshop results were so similar between these two laptops.
Yep. No touchscreen, but it does have a 1080p screen. I think the screen is, while matte, it's good, but $700.
Oh, that's much more reasonable.
And even though it's only running at 0.8 gigahertz with that Core M, I was able to do everything, Photoshop and Chrome with this. Didn't do Lightroom because I didn't import all my entire library, but all my tabs.
8.1, Windows 8.1.
Windows 8.1. Yes.
So the MacBook starts at $1,300. To get the extra 256 gigs of storage, which is really what you're paying for, you pay another $400 or $300.
Right.
So it goes from $1,299 to $1,599. I think if you're paying $1,599 for the MacBook, you've made a mistake. I mean, I think you.
I don't think you should buy a MacBook this year.
I mean, but if you need a MacBook, I think either.
I'm saying you don't.
Don't buy that MacBook.
The MacBook this year.
Yes.
If you need a computer, I think you really have two choices. You have the choice is really 11-inch Air.
Yeah.
If you want to pay $900, $1,000, and you need one for school, that's the one to get. If you need one for work, the 13-inch Pro.
I think the 13-inch Pro
with the upgrade.
Yeah, with 512 gigs of storage is a machine that I can use for everything that I do, which is photos, video, the sound stuff. All of that stuff works really well, and it's a half-pound heavier than my Air was, which is pretty amazing.
Space Gray's nice.
Dramatically better. I wish that they were doing this on all the line. Do you think that's the future of MacBooks? Is the Air going to go away next year, and that's going to be the new MacBook?
I think Apple's in a really weird position where they named their lightest computer not the Air.
And the crappiest computer.
That, I think, gets better over time.
Well, the processors will continue to improve. That is universal.
The screen, I think, is definitely the future. The screen. One port, I think, is Apple's future.
I think we'll see a lot of PC laptops with one port later this year, too, though.
Wireless and one port. But if you think about everything that, I mean, the message with one port is that wireless is the future. You get all your internet over Wi-Fi. Like, I don't mind this has no Ethernet. I'm totally in the world. I'm totally okay with it.
Now that I have a good AC router, and I'm getting 400 megabits off of AC with this laptop across my local network, which is amazing. I mean, that's as good as I get on shitty Ethernet at a hotel.
So think about the things that you can't do wired. Like peripherals, yes, wireless peripherals, that's fine.
Mouse and keyboard.
Even data, it's fine. Like even if you don't, this is a temporary solution, but it's Dropbox for everything. Power and display are the two things that you need to use at the same time together.
Right.
I know you can use them apart. You can charge it and then also plug it in. But they're best when used together. And the fact that you can't plug in display to this and also plug in power to this is ridiculous.
So here's the thing I like about the Pro is you have two Thunderbolt ports.
Yep.
So when you're in a situation where you want to have a monitor and an Ethernet port plugged in, you can totally do that. The adapters are expensive.
And power right there.
Yeah, and you have power separately. So like if you leave the adapter sitting on your desk at work, you plug those three things in, you're good to go. And it has an SD card reader. I don't like having a laptop without an SD card reader anymore. It's really incredibly convenient having an SD card reader built in. So that's the MacBooks.
That's this year's new Broadwell MacBooks. Broadwell U, I think, is a nice incremental step over Broadwell, but we're going to wait
here's the thing: is if you're coming from a laptop that's 2 or 3 years old, the battery life improvements on these are going to be dramatic. You're going to go from 4 or 5 hours to 10 hours, 8 hours conservatively on all of this. But
that's based on battery over time losing its charge.
It's based on both improvements in Broadwell and Haswell more accurately.
I mean, 2 years ago, laptops were going to 8 hours. No problem also.
Not the MacBook Airs.
Yeah, they were.
Okay.
If we're thinking of 2011.
You had Haswell.
Yeah, if we're talking about 2011,
so Ivy Bridge did not say Haswell did. So anyway.
We're living in a Haswell, post-Haswell world.
Man, I like Space Gray. I'm surprised you didn't get the champagne gold.
It's not backlit either.
Oh, it's just shiny, isn't it? It's just like the back of an iMac. Yeah, we can laser cut that out for you.
I don't think so. That's a new MacBook.
Yep.
We'll see you guys next time. Post your questions, your thoughts on these laptops in the comments below, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.